Hello, everyone. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a few things done while you listen today. I'd like to start out by saying please click the link in the description box and go to the post on which I'm placing this video so that you can read the summary and see some photographs and some other things that can be quite edifying to you. Now, to start out with, I like to encourage you to take care of your appearance first. You might not think that's important, especially if you're in captivity and you don't think you're going to be seen. You'll be seeing yourself in your reflections as you walk through the house or as you go outside. It's important to be happy, to look your best, and to be happy with yourself. And one of the advantages to being in captivity or to being without such a big social life during a war is that you can start to please yourself a little bit more and be happy, wear the colors you like that might somebody else might not like, and if you're alone especially, you can start doing some things that maybe you were a little bit cautious to do because nobody else was doing it, and you get to use your whole knowledge and ability. And I enjoy trying out new things, especially with sewing, and I will talk about sewing a little bit today to those of you who don't sew, just to encourage you. And I also want to emphasize that it's so important when you're alone, especially, that you realize that you're not really alone because you have God with you, and you need to be glorifying God in your appearance, as the Bible says. Now, I also want to talk about how we can exercise our freedom at home, how much freedom you have at home. You know, you see these caps and t-shirts and things that says, "I will not comply." I was thinking today that I would not comply with the modernist view of life at home. I would not comply with the idea that it's all a bother, that or that you have to have the state-of-the-art house and furniture and things like that. And I would like to do the "I will not comply with the fashion. I'm going to wear what I like, and I'm not going to wait for the world to change." And so I think we should have an "I will not comply with what the world is trying to force on us." And as far as thought and fashion and culture and music, and we'll just have our own culture. Now today, before you go and you start doing what you need to do, I want to share my teacup with you. You've seen this before. I'm just recycling everything. So you've seen this before, and it's the one that was given to me by a sister-in-law in Australia. So really like this, and it's called, it's Duchess, but there's no date on it. I imagine it's probably from the 1960s or 70s. So I hope you enjoy that. I'll be sure and put a picture of that in there. And I am going to talk a little bit about health because it's so important in your homemaking. If you don't feel well and you feel sluggish and you're moving at a slow pace and you don't have any interest in your home, it might have something to do with your appearance and your health. Those things are kind of interconnected, aren't they? Because you heard somebody say to you, I think if you got dressed and fixed your hair and took care of yourself the best you can, that you might feel a little bit better. You know, that can be true. And I'd like you to give it a try. Just give it a try. If that's all you get done today, just get ready. Get your bathed and dressed and as fresh as you can be, no matter what, even if you don't think anything's happening today. And then take yourself outside and just stand where there's a ray of sunshine. Just stand there for a few minutes and feel that ray of sunshine. And don't write it down on your list and then say, "Oh yeah, I stood outside for 5 minutes, check." No, go out there with some kind of feeling and emotion and gratitude, and thank God for it. And thank God that you're alive. We have these things on our side. We're alive. God is good. And if you can get your health, that is another important thing. I'm going to emphasize that right now because before you can get into homemaking and housekeeping, you have to have some kind of health. And also, when you start moving around, sweeping, washing things, sorting things, putting things in order, somehow it balances your mind and body and you feel the health come back. It's all interconnected. And so try to get dressed and get ready and then start moving around. And if all you do, though, is get dressed today, be happy with that. Sit down and read something pleasant. And recently I have received this special publication by Victoria Classics as one of the Hoffman Media publications, and it's called Autumn Bliss. And the reason I like getting this every year, and they also have one for spring and one for winter. And the reason I like getting it is it's like the old-timey, it's a special edition, and it's not like a monthly Victoria magazine. It's just one of their seasonal things. And it's much like the old Ideals magazines, where there's not a discouraging word in it. There's nothing there in there. There's no agenda. There's nobody trying to twist your mind about anything. And there's just, and it's not furniture store houses. It's old, real houses with old timey furniture and anything, nothing that you would feel pressure or envy. I know a lot of people would say I won't look at magazines about, that have decorating, because I don't like to feel that I can't ever have that. But this is just ordinary things that you could use yourself. And as a matter of fact, and there are plenty of them that look like something you could do. And it has a few recipes in it. They're fun to read. I don't follow them all, but I like to read about them. I like to read about how food is put together. And so in our Thrive classes, I have Zoom Thrive classes for my descendants and anyone who wants to, and they're homeschooled kids, and so they like having that little extra help and something. I decided to challenge them to what you could do with brown paper bags, brown wrapping paper. As I have ordered more things during captivity, my boxes come packed with this paper, and it is often twisted like this. Now, I have ironed it out sometimes and used it for other things, and used it for pages in the books and different things like that. And they have invented, and one of my friends that comes to my Thrive classes on Zoom turned a paper bag down and doubled it and lined it with some tissue paper and made a temporary dog bed for her little dog. I thought it was the cutest thing. Well, what I decided to do with this is the autumn here, and so I decided that I just leave it all twisted up, twist it around, and make a pumpkin out of it for a centerpiece, or for just some kind of little side interest. And there you go. I've got it all twisted up and made into a circle. And actually, brown paper is quite charming. You can make brown paper gingerbread ornaments too. But then I have a cone that I picked up, and I made myself a pumpkin in no time. I didn't have to glue, didn't have to tape, and I have a bunch of these, and they're actually quite charming. They really do look good. I know it seems silly, doesn't it? But we need to teach children how to use things that they have quickly, and make it with the least amount of store-bought stuff. And I'm getting more and more paper, brown paper. I don't want to throw it all away, and I want to use it again. So that is fun for me. So fit and healthy is so important, and I think that part of becoming more fit and healthy and is first of all, take care of your appearance. Bathing is so good for you. And there was a book years ago that I read called The Art of the Bath, and it was all about how important that was. And back in the olden days, before they even had showers, we all had to have baths, and they were emphasized as part of soaking out the toxins out of your body, and how important that was. And when people got into showers, they got into the rushed life, and so that relaxing time was taken away from a whole culture. And so this is so important. And so I have told you in the past about how my skin had been bothering me and peeling and everything. So recently I got something called salmon oil. See, there's the fish on it. And started taking a couple of these capsules a day. And in just less than 10 days, I haven't had to wear, I used to wear a lot of makeup over the top of, over the bridge of my nose and all around here. I haven't had to wear it, because it all, not only did it clear up, it filled out the skin. There was no marks on it or anything, but this is what the little capsules look like, vitamin E capsules. And so I wanted to tell you about that. And I take a couple of these every day, and I might increase it, but I don't know. I'm very happy that I'm not having to put globs of coverage on pock marks and spots and breakouts and stuff, because that has really helped me. Plus, I've been on the rebounder a little bit more. I found some demonstrations online that were free on what to do on the rebounder. When you used to buy these little trampolines, used to come with a little DVD that you could play, or a VHS or something that would tell you what to do. Well, they don't come with that anymore. You have to get online and find it. And so I've done a little bit of that and feel really good, and I think it has helped. I cannot say that the salmon oil has done the trick. It could be that I'm outgrowing this teenage breakout in my elderly years, or it could be the rebounder, or it could be just because I laugh a lot. I don't know. But and you'd have to keep track of your own health. I just like to encourage everyone to do that. And so I want to continue now with the homemaking and how important that is, because it's therapy. Sometimes you don't know which way to go, and you wake up in the morning and the world is already starting to put a big burden on your shoulders. Pick up some cleaning supplies and go around. I love watching these younger women on videos that they make, clean with me, and and I've learned a lot too. They don't leave any stone unturned. I've seen what they do. Anything that's in a container, they take it all out, clean out the container, clean out the bottles, put them all back in. They are very thorough, and I really get a lot of inspiration from that. But it's therapy, and so is sweeping. I found sweeping very, very good for me. I really feel differently after I have swept the corners and swept it out. And when I sweep, I'm always thinking of ancient times, because it's such an ancient practice. And even Jesus spoke of it in the parable about the woman who swept the floor looking for a lost coin, and how centuries of women before us have swept. And I have a beautiful straw broom that I just love, and I really enjoy. I enjoy it, and I turn on some music, or just carry my little notebook around in my pocket of my apron and write down ideas as I sweep through the house. And I think I breathe better too, because of the sweeping up everything. And so, ladies, I hope that I can keep you busy while I talk today, and encourage you to be fit and healthy at home. Now, one of my relatives got sick this last week, and so he called, and I am going to be the nurse. And so he called his doctor, and I'm the one that's going to do the looking after this person. And he called his doctor and asked the doctor for, I'm sure you'll have to pay, probably send a bill in the mail, and asked the doctor, told him what his symptoms were, and they were a head cold and wanting to sleep a lot and just feeling weak. And so the doctor said, and he quoted a verse, and of course this relative thought it was a flu, and so the doctor said, and he quoted, he said a few words that I jokingly call it a verse from Natural Cure's scripture. You ladies who know those scriptures and who have heard this phrase, a phrase similar to this, will be amused by it. He said, first of all, the flu you will always have with you. And he said, when this one is gone, there will be another one. And the flu has always been around from the beginning of time. And what it is, he explained, was that it's similar to being in detox, in that your body's sloughing off impurities and toxins. And that's why you will have certain symptoms. And he mentioned some of them, and they were the same. And so it's throwing off bacteria and toxins and stuff. And he says when you get an illness, any kind of illness, even a cold, it uses up a lot of zinc in your body. And he says that's why you get these symptoms. And so he said, don't treat it with chemicals, and that everyone's in a hurry to recover. So they always rush, and they get all kinds of potions and chemicals and things, and they want to take it so they can stop sniffling, and so they can stop coughing. And he said it's just better to treat everything with natural remedies, because if you stop it all up, it's not coming out, and it just takes longer. So he said, you have to treat it naturally, and you have to realize it might take a full 2 months after any injury or any illness, any feeling of illness, to feel fully recovered. And I've noticed myself, if I get any kind of little headache or just maybe I kind of have an off day, that for 2 days after that I'm not quite up to par. And so he emphasized that we have to be careful with our health and not rush getting well. And here are some of the things he said, and I typed it all up, and I will try to include it on the post for you. And this is what he said. I took notes while I was listening to him talking to my patient. He recommended the following treatment: zinc, 100 milligrams 4 times daily. Of course, this is one of his clients, and so he knows what his record is and what his history is and what he's already taking and all that. So don't take anything until you find out more about it and more about yourself and more about the product. So zinc, 100 milligrams 4 times daily. Vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams 4 times daily. And then he included ascorbic acid. Now, I have had my doubts about ascorbic acid because I believe it comes from corn, but I'm not sure, and I haven't studied it out completely yet. I'm not recommending any of this. I'm just telling you what the doctor said. I'm just being a reporter. Okay. Copper, 10 milligrams of copper 4 times daily, or 3 soft-boiled eggs daily. That's interesting, isn't it? And the NAC supplement, as directed on bottle, N-acetyl L-cysteine supplements encourage healthy glutathione levels and promote bronchial, respiratory, liver, and immune health. So you have to check out your local health food store or online to different like Neolife, Life Extension, Longevity, and all that stuff. And I don't want to leave anybody out, but there are lots of brands that are pretty good. And beet juice. He recommended beet juice, a pint daily. Now, I believe in that. I believe in it. It's so good for you. And then here was something else he said. Sleep as much as possible. That's interesting. 3 quarts of liquid daily, including all your other drinks like your beet juice. And this includes homemade chicken broth, made from homemade, make it from scratch, and not from a can or one of those containers of dried chicken soup and noodles and all with all the sodiums and stuff in it. You make your own. I use sea salt to season, which is good, very superior, I think. Also, he said, brush your teeth daily with hydrogen peroxide. That's interesting. And he said he really liked the, the water pick type of tooth care. I've got one of those, but I've been so busy caring for other people, I haven't had time to get it out of the box. So I really must get that out and use it before I lose all my teeth. And as I'm elderly, I still want to hang on to a few things. So then he said you can have pure apple juice and take a sip of liquid every 5 or 10 minutes when you're awake to keep hydrated. And someone else I know that's familiar with this kind of treatment said if you'll just sip on something all day long, it's like an IV drip and it'll keep you out of the hospital. He emphasized good home nursing care, which includes being comfortable, being checked on, fresh, pure food, and other things. And I suppose that's everything that I do for my people when they come here to recuperate or recover or rest. I'm the caregiver. And he said something else that was very interesting that you might like as a Christian. I think it's important too. He said, it is important to keep your mind from thinking defeating thoughts and dread. Negative thinking depresses the mind and body, making recovery much slower. That's why when we were kids growing up on the homestead in Alaska and we suffered from any kind of illness, our mother would do all kinds of things to make us more comfortable. She'd make a box and cut a little half circle in it to fit over your lap and put stuff on it. And she'd have a new coloring book and new crayons, and she would give us scissors and an old magazine and some paste and let us cut out and paste things on paper. She had things that we liked, like she would have applesauce and ginger ale and just different kinds of things that made being sick, oh, this is a special time. And we weren't in a hurry to get well, but it was not miserable for us. And this is, I think, good care, is just keeping on the upside. And she would read to us. And I remember my mother was Canadian, and she loved all the Anne of Green Gables series. So that was when she ordered books from the library, and my father would bring them home from town after work, and she would read Anne of Green Gables to us. And there were so many big words. I don't know if you know the original Anne of Green Gables. It had so many words, and she'd have to stop and look them up in the dictionary to tell us what they meant. I think we got a better education when we were sick in bed. And that was when she read to us, and she really took prodigious good care of us. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the care of your mind and your body as a homemaker, because how can you make beauty around you when you don't feel inspired and you don't feel it? And so you can do a couple of things. Is one, you can pray to God for some relief from this oppression that everyone is feeling. Those of you who are in states that are really in a strict lockdown. And of course, we have in the U.S., we have a lot of states that are free, totally free to come and go, and there's no restrictions. But for those of you that do suffer from isolation and captivity, then I would ask you to please pray to God for relief from it, because it's so harmful to people. And you remember in the book of Exodus how the children of the Hebrew children cried out to God for freedom from their captivity. And it's interesting, they'd already been in captivity for hundreds of years, but for some reason God heard that current generation. And we do have I'm so glad we have today young people who are really aware of captivity, really aware of what's going on and in the world with the way that we're being treated by the powers that be. They're aware of it. And so there are a lot of prayers going up for our relief, and God will hear our prayers. Before, yes, I'm sure we were all in the control of some of these people, but didn't realize it, or were too busy to notice, or were working so hard and didn't feel a desperation to get out of it. But now there are a lot of people that are very aware of how harmful captivity is, and how sinful it is, really, because God doesn't want us to be in captivity. He wants us to be free to spread his influence and to spread light and love around us, and to practice our living, earning our living. That's all part of God's plan and command too. And so we have a generation just like that generation of the Hebrews who cried out to God, and so that they could worship him, be free to worship him. And we are the same, and we have the same type of generation now. So I know that God's going to hear us. It will take time, though. But while you're home, and those of you who feel that you are in captivity, let's use our home and our homemaking to exercise our freedom, because God's already given us freedom within all this area. You can do many things. You can learn so much, and you can teach so much to your children and to your grandchildren from your home, or in your home, if you can have them in your home. And let's just do that. My experience has been that I homeschooled my own children. That's been a great advantage to me. This is one of the reasons I am not as disturbed or in a panic over what's going on, because I was treated this way when I was homeschooling. In fact, restrictions were put on me in some respects. neighbors and friends didn't want me to talk to them, to talk to their neighbors or anything to influence, because they were afraid that they would be influenced, So if I was seen anywhere, somebody would get mad at me and say, you were out and I saw you talking to somebody. This kind of stuff has gone on a long time in a lot of different forms, but now it's happening to everybody. And I took a stand, and I'm over it, so I'm not going to be as upset as many of you are, but I will tell you that the more they lose their grip on control of you, the more and harder they will try to restrict you. So you're winning this way. Because remember Pharaoh when the Hebrews wanted to leave, he would say, "Oh yeah, you can leave," and then he'd change his mind because he saw his income leaving, and he had all that free labor, and then he would say, "Oh yes, you can go," and then he'd find some other reason to keep them, but eventually he had to let them go, and they became too much trouble for him, I think, too. Part of that, and of course then he went running after them after they'd left. So it will be a while, and they will all be, this is their playbook. This is what they do, and you just have to hang in there and do good and do what's good and righteous at home. That's the only power we have right now as homemakers, is to be home and use your freedom at home. There are so many things you can do. You can learn to be a better organizer, a better cook, a better cleaner. In fact, I was looking up cooking classes online. They're all booked up. You can't get a live cooking class hardly at all. So I just look at the ones that are already placed there, videos that are already there. And I'm curious. I want to see how things are done, and it's really such a lovely time, because I remember when all we could do where cooking was concerned is read the recipe in a recipe book and then read the directions, but it lacked some of the technique, and it's nice to see how it's actually done by good chefs. Then another thing you can do is learn to sew. Now, I think that one of the reasons most women are sewing illiterate is because of the crummy way it has been taught. It has been taught, and it's so excruciatingly difficult that no one wants to do it. But I have a granddaughter that comes, and she wanted to sew. I said, why don't you just freehand sew? And she got a swath of material, and she laid an old dress on top of it. She cut around it, and she figured out, how to put things on the fold, and how you make two of everything, like a sleeve or whatever. And she would lay something across, like if she wanted to make a collar, she'd lay it across like this, look at it, and then she'd draw here, and then she'd cut and clip, and then she'd sew. And she didn't even use a pattern. And what she does, she just does her own thing. And I've seen a lot of young 14, 15-year-old girls are catching on to this. If they want to make a skirt, they'll wrap it around them, and they'll say, oh, I need a tuck here, a tuck there, sew it, wrap it around them again, look, oh, I'll just put another tuck here, and they have fun with it. And I'm so caught up in the way that I was taught, the tedious way of using a pattern and doing everything, putting on a facing and everything. This granddaughter of mine doesn't bother with facings. What she does is she just cuts two and just doubles it and makes a lining, so that you don't have to. Those facings don't always match up either, do they? They used to pull. They just didn't test these patterns out very well. And another thing she does that's real interesting is, if it doesn't quite fit or match up, she just put a piece in it. And she put a piece over here. And everything is so delightful. I'll try to get a picture and put it on the post for you. She will take, if it requires a zipper or buttons and buttonholes, what she does, I don't know where she got this idea, but if you leave people alone, they're often a lot more innovative. And sometimes when you teach them something, they're limited. Isn't that interesting? People are smarter before they're schooled. She takes this tab of fabric, she'll fold it and make it rather stiff and fold it and thick, and then she'll make the buttonholes on it with her machine. And then on the other side, she'll do another one, and she'll put the buttons on it. And it's just on these two tabs of fabric. And if the buttonholes turn out and everything matches up, she sews it onto the dress. instead of sewing the buttonholes directly on the dress, which of course they could ruin a dress if you don't get them right, she puts them on this tab and then puts the tab on each side of the dress. She does the same thing with the zipper. I don't know where she got these ideas. And then she's really gotten into the cummerbund, where she'll make a dress real loose and floaty on each side and then just wrap this belt around it a couple of times. And it's just absolutely charming. And I hope to include some pictures because it looks like she's done it from a pattern. And then she takes advantage of different textures. Like she sews a gingham dress, she'll use a white eyelet sleeve and it'll be huge and puffy and just anything she ever wanted. She reminds me of Anne of Green Gables, who said she wanted a dress to wear to the ball and she wanted puffed sleeves. Well, this girl likes puffed sleeves, and when she can't find, when we run out of elastic, what she does is she'll take a safety pin and put a ribbon on it and just run a ribbon through it and just tie it up. She'll find, she could make a button if she had to, and she'd find a way not to even have to use a zipper by folding the fabric over and around, so that like a wraparound skirt type of thing. And putting a little placket in it so you wouldn't need a zipper. And if you leave these girls alone, give them a big swath of fabric and give them some ideas. Now, I think partly, though, she watched her mother sew enough that she got a general idea of what to do. But you don't scold them if they make a mistake. And if she makes a mistake, she just adds a piece, or she redeems it all. She doesn't ever cry or make it difficult, because we've told her this is for fun, you're not getting a grade, and just let her go at it. So I wanted to encourage you to do, if you want a skirt or something, you want something new, you can just innovate it, and as long as it covers you and it stays together, you'll be fine. I am still stuck in the pattern era where they taught us such tedious, and yeah, I noticed in the sewing classes in school that they required such strict protocol with it that most of the girls didn't want to sew. There were only a few of us that were desperate enough to go ahead and obey all the strict rules about everything and sew. But it makes you sewing illiterate when they're not, there was something about the teaching that was poor. It's the same with art classes. Bad art classes make people art illiterate, when actually everybody should be able to if they want to. And just being encouraging is the most important thing, and that's what I'd like to encourage you to do. Now, so I've been talking to you for 30 minutes now, and one of the problems of being in captivity or being alone, I know some of you are alone. I kind of like to address some of you that are alone, especially those of you who are caregivers, because I'm learning more about what that must be like and how the caregiver has to look after herself or she'll wear herself down. And unfortunately, my patient is getting better and is up and around and probably be leaving us soon. So one of the things that we worry about, that we're concerned about at home and being homemakers, is if we get left without people around us, or we have times when we're not taking care of other people, that it's very uneasy for us to focus on ourselves. And we think, but I think, now wait a minute, is this serving God when I'm just mainly taking care of my own things, looking after my own stuff, sewing dresses for myself, and taking a class on cooking for myself and improving myself? It's not like us, is it? Especially if you've been a homeschooler. You like to share and you like to teach and invest in the life of someone else. If this is not possible, it can be quite uncomfortable. And you think, now wait a minute, does God want me just to be thinking about me all the time? And that's a good thing to think about, is He wants us to think about him. But in doing that, we're going to improve ourselves, aren't we? And we're supposed to make our minds dwell on things that are good and lovely and pure. And what better way to do it than to take care of your home, Learn to arrange flowers. And it's very good for your mind too. It's very good therapy. Learn to, if you can, sew. If you can't, I've often thought in lieu of sewing, it'd be nice to know how to drape fabric so it wouldn't have to be sewn. And you would just Velcro it here and there and stick it here and there and not have to worry about sewing it. I love fabric, and if I didn't have a sewing machine, I'd figure out how to drape it or how to tear it and tie it, different things with it to make clothing. And so, what better way to glorify God than to do your best? If you're all alone, you can do so many things to glorify God in your home. There's so much that you can learn, and then whatever you learn, you might be used of God one day. So keep your knowledge up on different things. There are a lot of books that you can get. I prefer a book. I have been taking classes for art journaling and also regular painting classes in acrylic, and I've discovered something that I would like. I want to get art books and just use those and do the lessons in the art books, because you don't have to be anywhere at a certain time to catch the class. You don't have to look at a screen, and that just drives me crazy. I know, trying to get into my an account that I have got to order something from, like whatever I need for my home or my food, it takes half a day sometimes to do the business you need to do online. So I'm going back to some books and some things. Even though I love Zoom classes and that sort of thing, it does control your time, and you end up sitting a lot in front of a screen. So I found an art book in my old books, and I'm going to just go through that and do that art book. I bought it years ago at Costco, thinking it might come in handy sometime, maybe for one of the children or grandchildren. And so I'm just going to use that and put myself through some lessons. And that's what I mean when I say put yourself in a course. Make a course out of something. Like this magazine that I was showing you a while ago, Autumn Bliss. And I know it's not autumn in the southern hemisphere, but you might have get the one that called Spring Bliss. Is that I could just use it as a course and just go through a couple pages a day, look at it, observe it. It's like I said, and I like the way that they have the chapters in it. They have a border, and it's just so pleasant, and there's never a discouraging word in it. And of course, I go straight to the bouquets and try to figure out how those were done. And I use my artificial flowers over and over in different ways, and I can also change their color, dye them, dip them, spray paint them, do different things with them until I've used them up to the ultimate capacity. Now, I want to read Proverbs 3:8 to you because it was about health. I want to talk a lot more about health. And I'm going to read out of a special book for you too. And this was Proverbs 3:8. Let me see if I can find it. And this mentions health, and this is that mind-body connection that I don't want to sound too ethereal and strange and otherworldly, but this is what I call it, the mind-body connection, because God has arranged that your mind and your emotions are connected in many ways to your body, and you can't separate the two. And that's why your health is so important, because it keeps your mind sharp and healthy. So here is what I'm going to read. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5. This is the one that talks about health to your flesh and healing to your bones. And I'm sure it's speaking in figures of speech, but still, you can tell when you're happy how much better your body feels, how much healthier you feel. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. This is interesting where it talks about paths. He will make straight your paths. It's interesting how figures of speech are used to emphasize a spiritual side of something, because we all know what a path is, don't we? And we all know that there's also a path to your life and a path to your mind and a path to your thinking. That would be interesting to study a path, or to, in our art journaling, a teacher wanted us to choose a theme for our art journal, and I chose home. But what about path? And you could make an acronym out of it too. Paths, that would be a great theme. And so that is something to consider, because it's a figure of speech when it comes to spiritual things. And that's something we learn to do. I'm homeschooling you today too. So that's something I want you to do, is study the word path in the spiritual, the and figure of as a figure of used as a figure of speech, and also in pictures. You can get a nice book that has pictures of paths, and on my, like, here's one right here. And on my Pinterest, if you'll go to my sidebar, I have a category called paths, and I'm fascinated with them. I'd like to paint paths. If I were to do an art journal in paths, that would be what I would like. And then I would include all the scriptures beside it that had the word path in it. So today, ladies, as a treat, I am going to read from Brian Kozlowski's book, The Jane Austen Diet, because he had a chapter on the mind-body connection that is not unscriptural, and you would agree with it. And he's done a marvelous job, a lot of work on this book. And he quotes, first of all, this is chapter 7. I believe, is this the last chapter? Yes, it is. I haven't read it all, but I did get his permission to read it to you. And he has a little quote here. And I like the way he has these little pink sections here throughout the book. If I were to go through it again, I would just read those parts to you. So, keep working or keep doing what you need to do, and I will read this to you. I don't know how far I will go now. As I have gotten elderly, I have forgotten what I've already read to you, and I had a bookmark in it, so I'm thinking I might have already read part of this to you. But one of the beauties of growing older is you forget things, and then it all seems new again. See? Make new friends every day. And so, I shall now take the liberty of wishing them health and happiness. That's from Pride and Prejudice. It's a quote. I like that he's gone through all of Jane Austen's work and found references to health and happiness. And he calls this health and happiness the mind-body connection. And so, he says this is the last chapter, and he says our journey through the health secrets of Austen world is almost over. This is the last chapter. But there is one final trip to make before we can live healthily ever after. Think of it as a sort of pilgrimage, an enlightening climb up the Regency equivalent. Inside, Jane Austen might not look like your typical Zen master, the requisite cup of green tea being the only earthly connection, but the woman is pretty good at bending mind over matter. I like the way he makes a comparison here. And it made me, when I read the chapter, I wanted to have one of the videos from the 1990s playing in the background, because I like the orderliness of it, and I like the script. And we sometimes have Jane Austen language or wives and daughters language in our house all day long, using these phrases that we have heard so many times that they become relegated to our memory. According to Jane, now, like I say, I might have read this in a previous video, but I'm going to try to go a little bit further today and leave the bookmark in the right place, so you won't have to listen to it twice. But, it's a lot of trouble to go back and find the video that I had this in, so you just listen to it again. All of us have the power to live, think, feel, and will ourselves to better health. Now, I wrote down something about how Galatians 5:22 said that the fruit of the Spirit is self-control, and that we must, in Genesis, when Cain was so angry, God said to him, behold, sin is crouching at the door, but you must master it. And throughout the Bible, we're taught to master ourselves, to become masters of our emotions and of our thinking and feeling. All of us have the power to think, feel, according to Jane, all of us have the power to think, feel, and will ourselves to better health. Some of the most far-out medical mysteries science has only started deciphering, and Austen has been tapping into the power of the mind for over 3 centuries. In novels that promote the medicinal magic of happiness, warn us of the biological damage of stress, and remind us that the mind and body always function alike. I believe in a true analogy between our bodily frames and our mental, she said. These were some of the last published words Austen wrote, and they prop up her entire health philosophy. As integral as food or exercise, thoughts and feelings were potent things to Jane, healing or harming our bodies depending on how carefully we manage our minds. I needed to learn this as a young person. Thoughts and feelings were potent things as healing or harming to our bodies, depending on how carefully we manage our minds. This is so important. And so years ago, I decided as a preacher's wife that I was going to have to not get hurt feelings or feel insulted when thoughtless people said things, because they didn't have the same values I did, and they didn't have the same training that I had, and they didn't have the same awareness that I have. Everybody's at a different level of maturity, and I would just have to not take it to heart, because it only stirs up more trouble when you confront people all the time, and I wasn't confrontive. And some people were teaching at the time a type of philosophy years ago that if something bothered you, you just confront people. Well, sometimes confronting people just made them angry and was more harmful and caused bitterness for years and years and years. It's better just to, I believe there's a proverb that's in the Old Testament that says, it is an honor for a man to overlook a fault. And I always remember that it is an honor for a man to overlook a fault. It just meant mankind. It didn't mean it was leaving women out. A lot of people get fussy about that. But so it'd be an honor, because then you don't stir up more trouble, and then you don't have more problems to overcome, and then you just open up a whole, what do they call it, kettle of fish? So I'll just read this to you again, okay? As integral as food or exercise, thoughts and feelings were potent things to Jane, healing or harming our bodies depending on how carefully we manage our minds. Have you ever thought, we talk about health, how to manage your body, you got to do this exercise, make sure you drink enough liquids and have the right nutrients and go for a walk and all these. We don't go for a walk anymore, go for a stroll, ladies. If you go for a walk, that sounds like exercise. But managing your mind. Have you thought about that? The health to your mind. And so when I said, get dressed, and when I wash my hair, I go outside and let it dry in the sun. That's the time that I walk outside and go outside and stand in the sun just very nonchalantly for 5 minutes. And it is also healing to your mind. Healing or harming our bodies, depending on how carefully we manage our minds. So your mind is the control station for your body, and it controls your health. I must take care of my mind, says Fanny in Mansfield Park. Every life in Austen world literally hinges on it. How accurately that applies to our own stories will soon be explored. So hold on to your wispy straw bonnets. We're about to get strange, wild, and metaphysical with Jane. Glowing and lovely in happiness. Embracing the patriotic spirit of Regency England. England and France were at war for most of Austen's lifetime. Yeah, there was a war. We're always in a war. Sometimes we don't know it. We know this one, though. Let's begin our mind-body lesson by doing the historically respectable thing, blaming the French. Remember in Wives and Daughters when Molly's friend just said, in my day we were content to beat the French on land and on sea. I felt so sorry for the French, the way that that novel was always making fun of this war that was going on between England and France, and the characters didn't find any sense in it, and they would always mock it. The main reason most of us find the whole mind over matter concept so strange and wild today is largely thanks to the 17th century French philosopher, and I can't pronounce his name. He believed that the ethereal motions of our minds and mechanics of our body were two separate entities, arguing that since they functioned independently from each other, they should be studied independently. His theory would largely influence our modern conception of the split between mental and physical health. But Austen never knew to separate the two, living in an age when, you see, this is the thing with religion too, being married to a minister for almost 50 years, is you often have to teach people that the mind and the body are interconnected, and you have to control yourself because you're going to have to account for what you do, and your thinking is the control factor. And you can't separate the two while you're alive on earth. They separate at death, but the way you behave yourself is going to determine your eternal destiny, and also your earthly relationship now with God. And she said, given her father's position as a minister, Jane would have grown up hearing the biblical proverb she clearly understood as literal: a joyful heart is good medicine. Yes, you want to look up the word medicine and the word health in the Bible and see all the connections to it. That would be one of your assignments, ladies. Very soon her fictional minister, Mr. Collins, would make the same connection in Pride and Prejudice. And this is one of his quotes. As for my fair cousins, I shall now take the liberty of wishing them health and happiness. See how closely connected they thought that was. He repeats the sentiment twice, as does Darcy, who says, accept my best wishes for your health and happiness. Wouldn't you like to have that greeting instead of hello and goodbye? I think I'll start using that again. My best wishes for your health and happiness. And he also said, let me see what he said, I'll take the liberty of wishing them health and happiness. It soon becomes very clear that you can't have one without the other in Austen world. It's usually shrugged off as just another one of Jane's sentimental plot devices, the way mood so intensely affects the overall health of her characters. On one extreme, Marianne nearly dies of a broken heart over her sorrow for Willoughby. On another, Anne Elliot comes fully alive the happier she feels, glowing and lovely, in very good health and very good looks. Smiles or frowns become such strong predictors of health in Jane's novels. It isn't surprising when the narrator of Emma expects us to believe that Jane Fairfax is a physical product of how she feels, spending most of the novel worried and depressed over her illicit engagement to Frank Churchill, her sickness and sadness. Her troubles and her ill health have the same origin, we are told. Yet when finally happy again, Jane Fairfax bounces back to health in only a few short chapters. A lot of times, yes, people do have depressed spirits. Who was it in? Elizabeth Gaskell's other novel called North and South, about the cotton mills in North and this contrast between North England and South England, where the woman, one of the main characters, said her and her low spirits. She says, we don't have those here in the North. Emma had never seen her look so lovely. That's referring to Jane Fairfax. That was fast. These are romantic fictions after all, but they also reflect a core belief of classical medicine. Confidence and hope do more good than psychic, wrote Galen, the 2nd century Greek physician. Cheerfulness gives new elasticity to our limbs and circulation to our juices. You know, I have seen this with housework is just never ending, right? Even if you live alone or just with your husband, or your relatives come in hordes and then leave or whatever, that it can seem so exhausting, and you feel so tired and overburdened. But when you get an idea, it's amazing how it revives your body. You think, oh, I think I'll just change that out, move that over here, and I'll put something different on this, and or I'll move this piece of furniture over here, and I'm just going to do this a little differently. Start to come alive again, and the movement helps, but it's also in your mind too. Putting it in modern terms, Austen was one of the first novelists to promote the power of positive thinking, boldly claiming that health, good humor, and cheerfulness are biologically connected. It was her infamous shove it to the splintered medical theory. It would prove to be scientifically centuries ahead of its time. Not until the 1980s would researchers first discover that Descartes was wrong, that there was a direct bridge between the feelings in our head and the functions in our body. Remember, in the past, when someone said something to you that was not kind and it made you feel really bad, or maybe someone said they didn't want any kind of friendship with you, how sad it made you feel, and then you lose your appetite. It does have a lot. Your mind and emotions and your thinking does have a lot to do with your health. Happiness makes it easier for your body to both fight illnesses and heal more quickly from them. As Austen observes in Pride and Prejudice, when people are happy, it displayed itself over their whole bodies. It gives Jane Bennet a glow of complexion, adds a delightful luster to Lizzie's eyes, and in a sense and sensibility makes Mrs. Dashwood look brilliant and younger than ever. No wonder Austenites are constantly reminding themselves to be happy. I will endeavor to banish every painful thought and think only of what will make me happy. It's the creed of every smart and healthy character, the insistence that no matter what life throws at you, a cancelled picnic at Delaford, a conniving Lucy Steele, and an earth-shattering secret, did I mention I'm engaged to Edward, and you never lose your composure of mind. Now I'm thinking of another character in another story from the 1700s, I believe. Though no matter what life throws at you, you should never lose your composure of mind. Eleanor does it with extraordinary zeal in Sense and Sensibility. Her mental composure is legendary, so calm, so cheerful, even in the face of relentless adversity. Others might attempt to thwart her peace of mind. Lucy Steele might let it slip that she's still a man-stealing hussy, but Eleanor knows how to govern her feelings and recovers from the bad news within seconds. Her heart had sunk within her, but she struggled so resolutely against the oppression of her feelings that her success was speedy. And when Eleanor isn't practicing self-composure herself, she's reminding everyone else to do it, to be composed, to pray, be composed. Lines like that tend to make modern readers squirm in their seats. It sounds uncomfortably like Austen asking us to suppress our true feelings. And I think it's really important and good and you're so blessed if you grew up with a mother who knew how to guide and guard your emotions. Let's say you start around 6 to 8 years old and you have disappointments and you cry when you're trying to learn something and it becomes frustrated. To have a calm and a nice mother who isn't going to throw up her hands or scold you when you have these normal emotions, but teach you how to regulate them and teach you how to think, so that you don't let the emotions overtake you, and to understand this is natural. And it always helps to have someone say, that's a pretty natural reaction, that's pretty normal. Lots of people feel like that, and that's pretty good that you feel like that, because that's a pretty hard thing to do, whatever. And so I think it's really important. Of course, it's not too late to be a child, and you can re-raise yourself and retrain yourself to think differently about your disappointments and emotions, and to keep your mind steady. So I want to read a little bit more of this before I go, and maybe tomorrow I'll keep the bookmark in the right place and start in the right place. Eleanor and Marianne, a case study. And he has this in this little thing here, this little square here. Throughout Sense and Sensibility, Austen asks us to consider the important question, is it better to frequently release our sorrows like Marianne, or try to subdue them like Eleanor? Remember in the scene in the 1990s play or video where she said, Eleanor, you're always so composed, and you never lose control. And Marianne clearly thinks it's better to scream into the proverbial pillow without any desire or command of herself. She lets it rip. I must feel, I must be wretched. Many people would still agree that releasing our anger and frustrations makes us feel better. Better than bottling them up, right? Surprisingly, no. Researchers at Iowa State University found that when people are angry, giving them the opportunity to vent their anger by ruminating over the problems, etc., actually makes them feel more aggressive, negative, and angrier than people who don't vent. A few exhausting pillow screams later, and Marianne eventually reaches the same conclusion, telling Eleanor, I saw that my own feelings had prepared my sufferings, and that my want of fortitude under them had almost led me to the grave. I compare my conduct with what it ought to have been. I compare it with yours. Yes, there was a phase of this venting thing. I don't know if you remember, it was back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, where a person could justify, even in churches, would justify being very cruel to someone and verbally telling them off, and just venting everything, and then expecting that, and then feeling that it was normal, and just expecting you to just go ahead and be their friend after you'd treated them so despicably. But it was called venting. Venting was supposed to be good for you, but the Bible says, be angry, but sin not. So you could feel anger and you can feel resentment, but you're not supposed to be showing any kind of offense through it. And so I didn't want to get too negative today, but I think it's fun to read about Jane Austen, and I do want to continue in Beautiful Girlhood too, because there's a really nice chapter in there. But I've already been here an hour, and I want to save my voice because I'd like to do another video in another day and do it on how to have church at home. And I have a paper that Mr. S typed up yesterday on all the things you can do, plus the recipe for the communion bread and what kind of communion drink you have to have and what it's all for. And I want to do that on a video pretty soon. I might have a few things in between. But in the meantime, ladies, today, do what you can and look up the word path and look up some other things that I mentioned earlier on in the video. Go and stand for 5 minutes in the sun. And don't do it mechanically. Go and do it and relax and rest and see what a difference that makes. Keep a little journal. If you don't keep an art journal, just keep a journal that you doodle in and that you write in about feelings, because I've been reading about feelings in this book, and I'll continue. That's his last chapter. Let me show you how big that chapter is. It's that thick on the mind-body connection. I do want to read it, and I hope it's been helpful to you, and I hope that you will leave a comment. To those of you who have left me email, I am going to do that. I am going to get to that. It always takes me twice as long to do things, it seems like. So I appreciate you coming, and I'm honored by your attention. And so I'll see you next time. Bye.